my ears are ringing this morning because of your friend, Tucker Carlson.
My friend.
And this thing that he said, this thing about this isn't how white men fight.
Carlson made a racist comment in a text to a producer in January of 2021. Carlson reportedly messaged the producer that he watched a video of a group of supporters of former President Donald Trump beating an Antifa kid. Carlson texted, "It was not how white men fight."
Why don't we tell people what we're talking about here? Tucker Carlson has been exposed. This is emails or texts at Fox News that were made available due to discovery in the Dominion voting machine libel case that they brought against Fox, which was settled for $750 million. And now there's some aftermath. John, you want to tell them exactly what you're talking about?
Well, there have been these tweets that we hadn't seen yet that apparently made Rupert Murdoch et al. Fire Carlson rather abruptly a week ago. And apparently one of them was that in one of his, not tweets, texts to one of the internal texts, and a long one, it's clear that he's reflecting, it's probably late at night, he sees a group of white men beating up on another white boy.
It's an Antifa person, isn't it? Is it January 6th that this is happening?
I think it was, and they are white. You could say in a very general way, skinheads. I doubt if that's what they were, but ones who would try to beat the hell out of an Antifa protester like that. And Carlson seems to be under the impression that I think it's safe to say it's a black way. He's not referring to Chinese people, but white people don't fight like that. There's a kind of...
Well, he didn't say black. He just said white don't fight like that.
Right, but there's a barbarity that you wouldn't expect of white people. Who would you expect it of? And I think it's safe to say that he's thinking of probably black and Latino gangsters. And so that's just not the white way, though. White people fight more politely. That's pretty... I am not one to walk around calling people racist because it's fun or out of some sense that my doing so improves society because we have to identify every little smudge of it that we find. But that's a pretty bigoted thing to say, to imply. I mean, it basically just, plays into the idea that there is a kind of violence that is for some reason, or it's in some sense inherent to, yes, black people and maybe Latino people too. He's not referring to any other people. He doesn't mean that Jews, they're white, etc. But he means brown people.
Let me ask you this. So I'm going to defend Tucker Carlson here.
Have fun.
I mean, he just got fired by Fox. The first thing I'd say is, isn't it interesting that we're learning about this particular message at this time? Who benefits? Well, Fox News obviously is in control of the information flow and has a problem of managing the blowback from firing its most popular host. So obviously you want to make him look bad. Secondly, there's this piling on. Your employer, the New York Times, did a major quote unquote expose of the white replacement theory, conspiracy theory, racist character of Tucker Carlson's ratings busting program.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I watch, not religiously, but I watch on occasion. I tune in at 8 o'clock to hear what the monologue is going to be from Tucker Carlson about a whole lot of range of issues. From Ukraine, where he's one of the only voices in major journalism saying, is this a good thing for us to be doing? One of the only people saying, who blew up that Nord Stream pipeline? Who really did blow it up? One of the only people saying, can you count the number of former CIA officials and former generals and whatnot who are coming on liberal cable news and feeding to the American people with a spoon the propaganda of the defense establishment in this country? Can you count them? He's one of the only people doing that. He had Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on his program to talk about vaccines. I know no one is supposed to credit Robert F. Kennedy Jr. When the kids riot in Chicago and they run like mobs down the middle of Michigan Avenue and Wabash Avenue and State Street, and they beat up random strangers with their fists flailing like that, the only place on national television that you're going to see any videos of these kids behaving in this way is on Tucker Carlson. Obviously, he's a racist. It's not that easy. I don't think you can dismiss Tucker Carlson. He has a huge audience. Who are those people? They're all racist. They turn in to get red meat. That is the bubble of Manhattan speaking. I ain't going there. Tucker Carlson is an important voice in American journalism. Yes, he's conservative, and yes, he's a provocateur. Yes, he is. But you can't read him out of the conversation by calling him a witch. And that's what people are doing. They're calling him a witch. Well, what about the border? He's the only person, not the only one, obviously not the only one, raising the question of whether we're going to allow the future of our country to be determined by a failure to enforce our own laws. That's a fair question. You don't have to be an anti-Mexican, anti-brown person to raise that question about our country. He's the only one saying that when a person shows up with a man with exaggerated breasts coming almost over his knees and is putting himself in front of children, is that what we actually want in our country? He's practically the only person who's saying that. So it's just too easy to put a hood on Tucker Carlson and shunt him off the stage without addressing any of the actual things that make him the most popular cable host broadcaster in the country. I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that.
So where the bubble is not supposed to go is that where Tucker Carlson gets the idea that kind of gang violence, that there's something black about it, and that is what he means. Where he gets that is not just out of the air. You're right. There are things that, and we don't need to see the video. You can just read about it. I personally don't watch many videos in that sense. But when you're talking about who is committing that kind of mayhem in Chicago, it's not that we're not seeing videos of white boys doing it somewhere else in town. It's black guys doing it. And there are the riots that you're always referring to that happened in 2020. Some of it was white people, but in terms of the breaking the windows and stealing the TV sets, it was our Omar who was doing it. And, you know, even now here in New York, it's been found that a small number of people are responsible for a vastly disproportionate amount of shoplifting. They totted it all up from, I believe, last year. And it's really it's a few hundred people. And of course, none of the stories that I'm aware of said this. I kind of looked around, but there is a very strong brown tilt. And I would venture to say, from looking at names, black tilt to the people who are doing this. Some of the ringleaders, oddly enough, are East European. Like, they're layers of it. But in terms of who's running into Walgreens and stealing shampoo and razors and things, I shouldn't say razors, that ancient stereotype, but razor blades are expensive. I get it. If I were going to be a criminal, I would sell those out on the street. And so it's black men who are doing that. You cannot help seeing that as a sentient person. And yes, there are white people who commit crimes, but unfortunately in America's cities, in terms of homicides, for example, the number of white and Asian people who do it is absolutely infinitesimal, and black people do it a whole lot more than Latino. And he's basing it on that. But Glenn, I don't think it's as simple as that. The issue is whether or not he should therefore conclude that there is something. Well, no, let's just try this. He could know that ultimately the reason for that disproportion is something you might call structural. There's a history that makes these black men more likely to do this, and still say black people do it more often and black people need to do something about it. He could say that, in which case the case for his being a racist becomes thinner. But when he puts it that way, in that shorthanded way, and maybe that's because he was being casual and wasn't thinking about being heard, but his idea that there's a white way to fight and then there's the way that black people do it, you can't help thinking, how many hair splittings is he doing? Isn't he really, especially if you look at all the other sorts of things he said, such as the replacement? These people are going to replace us. Now, he might formally know that there's a reason these people behave this way. But then again, we're splitting hairs, it seems to me. Those people are going to take over. We white people better start tanning our testicles and, reproducing more because we don't want the whole country to become them.
You're putting words in his mouth now, John. Excuse me. Come on. He never said anything.
He said something
like
about tanning testicles. And the idea was to increase fertility.
If you want to optimize and take it to another level, expose yourself to red light therapy.
Yes.
And the Juve that we were using in the documentary, There's a massive amount
which
of
is testicle tanning.
It's testicle tanning, but it's also full body red light therapy, which has massive amount of benefits. And there's so much data out there that isn't being picked up on or covered.
So obviously half the viewers right now are like, what? That's testicle tanning? That's crazy. But my view is, okay, testosterone levels crash and nobody says anything about it. That's crazy. So why is it crazy to seek solutions?
The question is, and this is a real question, should he be allowed to say these things on television? Many people say, oh, no, because that stirs up more virulent racist feelings. My question is always, if they were there to be stirred up, what is this idea that you don't say anything to stir it up, as opposed to thinking what people are thinking they're going to express in some way, or even if they're not expressing it, it's still there. The work is to change how people think, and frankly, for Black America to look inward and to do what we can, which is never going to be everything, to get better despite the unfortunate situation. It's both government and us. But you don't think that there's anything wrong with that sentiment of his, that Black men are violent and that Black men are about to replace us all? That doesn't rub you the wrong way at all?
Well, I don't know that Tucker Carlson thinks that. He might think it. If he did think it, I would disagree with him. Yes, that would rub me the wrong way. I think what's the claim about the replacement thing? The claim is the Democrats don't enforce the border because those are their voters coming over.
Yeah, Latinos are going to take over. Right?
Those are their voters 10 years down the road, which may or may not be true, but that's the theory. The Democrats don't enforce the border. That's certainly true. I mean, if you want to speculate about Tucker's motives, I suppose we could speculate about the motives of the people who don't enforce the border. So now we're in the same ballgame. He's a racist, or he's someone who's speculating adversely about the motives of the people who disagree with him about what to do on the border. So I this racist thing, it's not an argument. It's ad hominem in the extreme. It's saying bad person, bad person, bad person, when the whole currency of the realm here is not whether or not somebody is going to go to heaven. The currency of the realm here is whether or not their arguments are persuasive. So, should he be allowed to say innuendo, which is, that's not how white people fight, which is like saying, when I see that kind of melee going on, I'm inclined to think that it's Black. So I'm surprised to hear that it's not white. No, of course, that's not an artful thing to say. If I were the editor-in-chief or the publisher of the Oregon, I wouldn't have him saying that on my platform. Should he be allowed to say it? Of course he should be allowed to say it. I mean, there shouldn't be any law against saying it. But if he works for me and I control the copy that goes out on my platform, that's not what I would have said. I wouldn't have that said for the reasons that you allude to, which is that it's socially unproductive and it feeds into various stereotypes. On the other hand, I'll say this. This is an emperor has no clothes argument. Because you won't let him say it, because he forbears, because he goes along with the program and we're quiet about it, doesn't mean that people can't see it.
That's true.
And that they don't think it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's not a straightforward problem to reckon whether suppressing a commonly held and obvious fact from overt expression kills the fact or makes it even more powerful and more dangerous.